guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited about this video today, and let me tell you why. Because I have been on the internet for 10 years, okay? There's only so much content you can do. You can't reinvent the wheel. I struggle myself all the time with content ideas and what to talk about, and I rely on you guys a lot to give me ideas or ask questions, and that's why I resort back to my full days of eating and favorites videos and vlogs, because they're staples, and you can always do a vlog, right? But speaking of full day of eatings, I posted a full day of eating reel like a week or so ago, and for some reason this video in particular got a lot of questions about shift work. Now, if you're new here and you just maybe don't know, about eight or 9 years ago, I was a shift worker myself, and my schedule was 6 at night till 6 in the morning. I also had day shift when I was on training, but then when I went to night shift, I did that for 6 years. And it was also right around the time that I started my YouTube channel, and it was because of that reason, right? Like, especially back then, there weren't a lot of like YouTubers, CrossFit vloggers that were blogging about that, but then also trying to balance their full-time job, let alone a shift work job or an overnight job, and how to, track your macros and reach your goals and understand what things were impacting your performance. And so that's kind of like where my journey began. And so I feel very close to that whole entire topic. And I feel like I've learned a lot along the way. And now being with someone who was a shift worker when we were in Raleigh as a paramedic, and now going into firefighting paramedic with different types of shifts, right? Like in Raleigh, she was 12, and now for her new career, she'll be 48-hour shifts, which that might be a little bit easier, but we'll get to that. Anyways, I feel very tied to this topic because I have learned a lot of things along the way, and I just want to share with you some things that really helped me and what I tell my clients who I now have currently as shift workers. Of course, just like with anything, there's going to be so many different variables that may not apply to you, right? Like some people have multiple children, some people have really long commutes, some people have 12-hour shifts, some people have 48-hour shifts. It's all going to be different. So just, take this information for what it's worth. Maybe it applies to you, maybe it doesn't, but these are all of the things that I wish I knew when I was a shift worker, and what I personally tell people who are currently shift workers today. So let's get on into it. In my opinion, now I do think that this video in particular, because I was a night shift worker, and that's typically where I think impacts people with their fitness the most. Now, don't get me wrong. When I had to do 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. when I was on training at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and then having to rush home, shove dinner down my throat, walk the dogs, and then go to bed at 8:30 was also miserable in its own way. But your body is still sleeping at night, whereas when you are a night shift worker, your body's already messed up because our bodies are not designed to be awake all night. So already off the bat, if you are a night shift worker, there are some things in terms of recovery and your hormonal changes and cortisol levels that are already being impacted without adding any type of additional layer of stress of training and all of that. And again, depending on what type of shift worker you are, your cortisol levels and your adrenaline may be dumping throughout your shift depending on what you do, right? So already, before you add in any fitness things, your body's already in a heightened state of stress, which right off the bat, you're gonna feel more sore, more tired physically. You feel like you can't really fully recover and catch up, even if you are trying to overdo your sleep on your days off, which as a just first point, if you are a night shift worker, do your absolute best to keep your schedule the same. I know it won't be obviously the exact same because you're trying to get things done on your days off and things aren't open in the middle of the night, but as much as you can, just because your circadian rhythm is already messed up from being on night shift. And with night shift, it has been shown that it does impact your ghrelin hormone specifically, which is your craving hunger hormone. And typically, most people who are night shift workers, they tend to crave carb, heavy foods, sugary things, sodas, energy drinks, all of that. So that cycle of feeling tired, and then your ghrelin increases, and then you grab the energy drink, and then you crash, and then you have a carb heavy, snack or whatever that may be instead of a well-rounded meal. These are cycles that impact your fitness. Even if it doesn't seem like it in the moment, it's definitely contributing down the line and also making it difficult to recover. And also the social camaraderie aspect of a lot of these shift work jobs, especially firefighters, police officers, they will eat a lot of times together. And I also experienced this when I had that type of job. People would really, really judge what you were eating. If I went to the kitchen and heated up my whatever it was, beef, rice, zucchini, people would always make fun of me for that. And as a newer person to tracking macros, or maybe this is like the start of your fitness journey, that can be really like embarrassing and overwhelming. So the first thing I will tell you about that is, I know it's easier said than done, but do not let the comments of those people about your food impact the way that you choose to then eat from there on out, because it's your body. They don't have to feel the effects of whatever it is you're eating. And honestly, people who are happy within themselves and who feel good about themselves make other people feel good about themselves. And the opposite is also true. This is like one of my favorite quotes that I just recently heard maybe a couple months ago. And it is so, so true. Like if you are happy within yourself and you feel confident, you're not going to make fun of someone else eating chicken and rice. Like you're not going to say anything because it's weird. It's weird behavior to comment on what someone else is eating in any capacity. So just remember that, like, you are not the weird one for eating something healthy while they're eating out. A lot of times it's projecting, and two, it's weird that they're commenting on your food. I think the other thing that a lot of people struggle with while being on shift work is either you're getting mandatory overtime, your shifts are going longer, you're getting stuck on a call, you're missing meals, you're missing training sessions, you're feeling frustrated, and it just doesn't ever seem like you can get to where you want to be. Again, totally understand that. Although in my personal situation, we could only be in mandatory overtime for 4 hours after our 12-hour shift. So the latest that I could be at work was 10 a.m. after my shift. And if that were to happen, which happened, you know, pretty frequently, I'd say, there was no way I was training after that. You know what I mean? Like that whole day was fucked up, and then I still had to go home, go to sleep, and then wake up and go back to work. So, you know, you have to consider the lifestyle and the career that you are in and understand that sometimes those things are going to happen. And it's more about how we can be flexible and change some other things in the other parts of your week to kind of like make up for it, for lack of a better term. But being flexible is so important, and this is something that I really struggled with. Oh my God, did you hear that? That was like someone just fell through the ceiling. Just the way I am, it's very hard for me to be flexible with things. Like if I had a plan to be going to the gym at a certain time and it doesn't work out for whatever reason, I feel so much anxiety. So I understand like the frustration and the feeling like you're never caught up on your fitness, but being flexible and understanding that you can move around your days, and it's more so about the weekly average, is so important. So with that, all of those things that I think impact, of course, like kind of leaning into that with you're missing your sleep, you're missing your training sessions, the sleep debt, the sleep impact, the negative sleep impact rather, that shift work normally has, specifically night shift workers, is astronomical. Some things that are really, really helpful is, number one, making sure that you are napping wherever you can, even if it's like 1 or 2 hours, just even like the day before your shift starts, because normally people who are shift workers work like 3 days in a row and then have 4 days off. The day before that you are going to work, try to sleep longer than you normally would. Get an extra nap. It's like, I used to call it sleep banking, and I would just like add a little bit of sleep wherever I could before. Think of it like, you know, I'm topping off the gas tank, right? Like I want to make sure that I'm going into work as well slept as possible, because I know that likely the next 3 days are going to be shit. I was also very serious about my sleep hygiene, and I feel like this is very, very important, especially because when you're sleeping during the day, there's a lot of noise that's happening, right? So like I had blackout curtains, I slept with a blackout mask, I had a fan going, a white noise machine. Like I made sure that my sleeping conditions were prime. I still kind of do that. But obviously it's easier when it's dark out as compared to when it's light out. So you have to do these extra things, which I'm sure a lot of you probably do, but just as a general reminder, making sure that you are really, really sleeping in the most optimal conditions possible. Now, if you're not showering after your shift, I'm judging you a little bit, but taking a really nice hot shower after your shift, having the air conditioning be super low, like that combination, just kind of triggering your body into that like relaxed, calm state after most of you are having like high stress, high energy shifts is also super important. And making sure that you're not staying glued to your phone, because like I would try to like scroll Instagram and stuff before I would go to sleep or watch YouTube videos. And I found that when I did not do that, shocking, it actually helped me sleep and get to sleep faster. So making sure that you're applying those same rules like you would if you were sleeping at regular times to the times in the morning when you're going to sleep. Now, coffee and energy drinks obviously affect everyone differently, but just like people say, you know, you really shouldn't have your energy drink or your caffeine after 3 p.m., it's kind of the same thing for night shift, especially if you're working through that like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. hour. I personally stopped having any caffeine after midnight for me, which honestly was very, very hard. But when I had caffeine later on, number one, I started relying on it too much, and it was much harder for me to fall asleep. So if you can limit your caffeine, again, obviously that's going to help you with your sleep, which is going to help you with your recovery, which is the number one important thing. Obviously, this is going to be career dependent because you're not going to be able to wear blue light glasses for a lot of jobs, but if you can, even when it comes to looking at your phone, turn your phone on the like light setting. I forget what it's called on the iPhone, but you can change it to like that warm tone so that you're not staring at super bright light all the time, especially when it's getting closer to your like end of your shift. And like, I think even in our department, I'm pretty sure like our computer screens, they had the yellow tinge on them specifically for the night shift people, but I still wore blue light glasses. So I feel like that just, you know, little tiny things can help. When it comes to actually like falling asleep, I stuck with magnesium-based sleep supplements and not melatonin-based supplements. R&R is what I take now, even to this day, and it's a blend of magnesium, B vitamins, kava, lemon balm, I think is the other one in there, and it's more of like a natural relaxation support instead of a knock your ass out and make you feel zonked when you wake up sleep. You know what I mean? So I would say definitely try to do all of those other things to regulate your circadian rhythm as much as you can. But when it comes to falling asleep, avoid like knocking yourself out with heavy duty things and try to go a little bit more natural because it does really make a difference. On to the other very important part of this equation, which is the nutrition side. And obviously, as a nutritionist, I feel well inclined to give you this information and these tips that have helped me. But I think, you know, the thing that I see, even just like as a coach and from my clients, and what I struggled with was the scheduling of things, obviously, because it's super weird to be eating like a breakfast at 7 o'clock at night and then a dinner at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's still weird on your body, even if you've been doing shift work for a long time. And two, the other most common thing that I see is people just either not being able to eat enough because of their job, and then they're like just pounding crap food because it's all they can get in. And obviously, again, you know, certain people are not able to take breaks. They're not able to eat like real meals. So I get that. But there are just some things that I think can help manage in some ways and still allow you to prioritize your nutrition as best as you can. So for me personally, I had the same schedule on my shift days every single time. So when I got off work at 6 a.m., I wasn't eating like within the hour before that, just because I think about it like if you were on a regular schedule, right? Like I'm not going to eat dinner at 6 o'clock and then go to bed. So, and you don't have the luxury of having those 2 hours to chill, decompress, you know, at that time. So for me, I did not like to eat right before my shift was ending. If I was super, super hungry, I would have a really light snack, like a Fiber One brownie or something. I think that was like my go-to back in the day. And I just would make sure that I had 2 meals at all times that were always consistent. Not the same foods, but the same meal. So for example, when I got woken up to go to my shift, whatever time that would be. So like if I got off at 6 a.m. and went to sleep and I fell asleep around 7, I would wake up around 2, I think normally. And then that first meal would always be breakfast. So my breakfast, you know, varied, but it was always breakfast. And then a couple hours later, once I was either about to go to work or going into work, I would have my lunch. Then luckily I was able to take my break at midnight. That was like my designated break time. And I ate my dinner then. So the way that I structured my like 12 hours in the first, like from, you know, midnight, I guess the night before, till 12. What I did was waking up around 2 or 3, breakfast. Then I would work out after that. When I came back or on my way home, I would have a protein shake of some kind. And then I would have like another real meal if possible. Now, again, like I said, this isn't going to be realistic for everyone, but the more that you can consume like nutrient dense foods before you even get into work, the better it is, because then if you're at work, you're not able to eat, you can just grab something quick and it's not like you haven't eaten anything at all from the time you went to bed till the time you went to work, you know? Obviously, on the go things have come a long way in the last 10 years, I'd say. And we have things like Fairlife, Core Power, Chobani's, Okios. There's lots of those little grab and go protein shakes that are at a lot of gas stations if you're someone who is on the road for your shift. And if not, there are a lot of things that you can get at the grocery store to bring to work that are super easy and quick to eat. So any type of protein shake, protein bar, beef jerky, little like nut packages. Sometimes I've even seen those at gas stations that have like the cheese, the fruit, the jerky. Like they've come a long way. Okay. Something else that was like very ride or die for me when I didn't want to eat anything was just like deli rolls with cheese on the inside. I sometimes I even wrapped like turkey in mozzarella cheese sticks, and I would eat that if I could not eat a real meal. And that's something that's better than nothing. I also had what I like to call my emergency snack pack, and I literally had like Fiber One bars. I forget what the protein bar was that I loved back then, but I had something like that literally in the pockets of my tack pants. I swear to God. And that would be just because like if I wasn't able to get up, or if like I was doing something else, I had food on me that allowed me to eat, that was trackable, and I wasn't starving myself. Because like I said, I think that the biggest thing that happens with shift work in general is just missing the meals and missing the food. So trying to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, whether that's, you know, if you're at a firehouse and you're able to stack the pantries with something that's just for you, or in your police car, or in your tack pants, or in the lunch room, whatever that may be. Always really good just to have a backup of some type of protein snack, or just like a snack in general, so that you're not without food. And of course, just like I would suggest for anyone who was working shift work or not, to bulk prep everything. Bulk prep your proteins, your carb sources, your veggies, and just mix and match. Like if you can handle that for the 3 or 4 days that you're on shift, just eat as boring and as bland as possible, because it's going to be about getting in the nutrients and less about making like these fancy meals, because you're likely not going to have the time to come up with all these fancy meals, cook all these fancy meals, and who knows if you'll even be able to eat them. So like, you know, I think about for people who maybe might not be able to eat a lunch at all, I would be much less sad if I missed out on like chicken and rice than if I like made this intricate meal that I then wasn't able to eat. You know what I mean? So, you know, just kind of keep it basic and simple. Do your meal prep like the day before your shifts start. I think, like I said, I think most of you will work like multiple days in a row, and just keep it very, very basic and protein, carb, veggie, mix and match. Check out my Meal Prep Monday videos on my channel. And then outside of the nutrition, what are we doing about training? Okay. Another huge mistake is overtraining when you are already under recovering. This is pointless. It is not going to do you any good. And especially if you are on a fat loss journey, a muscle building journey, it is just not going to go well for you, because your body is not able to recover as it would optimally if you were not on these shifts. So why are you going to put yourself in that predicament by then overtraining and making things worse? So honestly, for most people, especially if you are not trying to train for the CrossFit Games or some very high level of elite sport, 6 days of training is probably not going to work for you. I tell my clients, if you can get between 3 and 5, that's amazing. Like 5 would be awesome, but 3 or 4 is just as good, especially if you're able to get quality workouts in that you can recover from, because that should be your #1 priority. For example, having a 4-day upper and lower split would be amazing. And I always suggest people prioritize compound lifting, because you're just going to get the most bang for your buck. And that goes for your entirety of the workout that you're doing. Like, you want to make sure that you are making the most of your time. And this is why I don't really suggest people try to get to CrossFit classes on their shift days. And I did do an entire video on that. It's like a deep dive into why I don't think you're getting the most for what you're putting into a CrossFit class. I'll link that video in the top somewhere if you want to watch it. I think it's really, really good, but might ruffle some feathers on that one. But anyways, if you only have a short amount of time to do your workout, you want to get the most out of it. So compound lifting should be the priority. That goes for if you're doing Olympic lifting or whatever that may be. Then your accessories, then your cardio or short metabolic conditioning piece. Again, depends on the person and what their priorities are, but across the board, if you have a short amount of time, make the most of it. And training by RPE, rate of perceived exertion, is also, in my opinion, like a lot just like less stressful, because there's a good chance that you're not going to be able to hit the normal percentages, and it's going to vary, right? Depending on how much sleep you got, what your shift was like, how much you ate, all the things. And so if you're like going into a training session supposed to be hitting 79% or 82%. It can be really frustrating because you're expecting to hit these numbers and that's just not always going to be the case. So instead, utilizing rate of perceived exertion is great because like your RPE of 8 on one day is going to be different than what your RPE is on another day, depending on those factors. So I think that if you're just kind of taking the stress out of things, it's a lot better for people, especially mentally. And if you are someone who, you know, is really tied to those numbers, that can be really good for you. And also don't forget that walking is such an easy way to just overall increase your total daily energy expenditure without having to put so much like effort into the training. So like if you're not able to get a full hour of a lifting session, no worries. You get what you can, you get what you get, you don't get upset. And then you prioritize walking and steps outside of that. Kind of with that, you have to think about it in the sense that like you are literally doing this fitness thing on like an advanced challenge mode. You know, like most people are on the regular mode, you're on hard, difficult mode. So take that into consideration, especially if you're someone who struggles with comparison and like seeing all these influencers on social media sleeping 10 hours a day and they don't have 9 to 5s and they don't work shift, you know, 12-hour shifts that are doing things that are very stressful on the body. Like all of those things are going to impact your physical fitness and your physical health. So you have to remember that. And I know it's really hard, like especially when you're on social media, but do not compare yourself to people that don't have the same stimuli as you do, because it's silly and you're just setting yourself up for frustration and like, I don't know, it's just not a good mental place to be. Instead, you want to focus on the things that you are proud of and putting effort in, like, I don't know, hitting your protein goal and just like trying to get some sessions in where you can, getting 10,000 steps a day, sleeping for 6 hours instead of 4. Like, dude, Lainey, oh, let me just say really quick, speaking of Lainey Lou, do not, on your last day, if you are a night shift worker, do not stay up for the rest of the day to get on a normal schedule. Like Lainey would get off at 7:30, okay, on her last day of her paramedic shift. And then she would stay up that entire day so that she could try to go to sleep at 8 o'clock. This girl was a zombie. Not healthy. She felt like shit, no shit. And she just could not recover enough. It's really hard to build muscle in that kind of capacity when you're under that duration of stress and that level of under recoveredness. It's just crazy. So like, don't think that you're gonna like trick your body by doing that. What's that mean? That's like you played yourself. Okay, so we're not doing that. And also, just as one little extra side note, if you are tracking your foods, I did this and I suggest my clients do this as well. Don't log foods on different days just because it, you know, went to past midnight and change the day. Log all of your food in one day, even if it was technically Tuesday when you ate like your last meal or whatever, you're going off of a different schedule. So it's the same way that you would, you know, log your foods if you were on a day shift schedule. Do that in reverse basically if you're on night shift. So like for me, when I went into work at 6 p.m. on a Monday and I got off at Tuesday, 6 a.m., everything that I ate on my shift from Monday to Tuesday was logged in my Monday MyFitnessPal. And then same for Tuesday, Wednesday. And then of course I didn't stay up till 6 in the morning on my days off, so that wasn't an issue. But I do always suggest people try to keep it as regular and normal as possible because again, you're doing this on the not normal mode and it is super challenging. A lot of you as shift workers are already carrying the mental load of caring for other people or helping other people, and you are so important. So just remember that like you're trying to help yourself, not work against yourself. So don't neglect your recovery, your sleep, your food. You know, balance the things that you feel are important to you without sacrificing other important things. So it is possible. It's just a little bit more difficult, but it is doable. And again, your work is so important. And I hope that this video was helpful. So if this helped you, or if you are a shift worker, comment down below what your shift is, any tips that you have for anyone. I would love to hear them. And if you know someone who's a shift worker that might benefit from this video, don't hesitate to share it, of course, and give it a thumbs up and click that subscribe. You already know it's Monday with Manders, and I will see you in next Monday's video.